The scandal, manipulation and political intrigue. ZDF satirist Jan Böhmermann is exposed as a liar, and public service television supports him. This is no ordinary scandal. This is a story of power, media and manipulation, which at first glance began as a simple case of journalistic misinformation. It is turning out to be a political power struggle that could shake the media landscape in Germany. The AfD has not only filed a lawsuit, but is sending a dramatic signal. A signal that raises the question, who really controls the truth in our media? Jan Böhmermann, the self-proclaimed king of provocation, has fallen, but not because of his satire, but because of his own lies. What began as an ironic accusation against the AfD has developed into a drama that puts trust in public broadcasting to the test. Böhmermann, known for his sharp tongue, presented a picture of an iPad in his ZDF magazine Royal program on September 19, 2025, to prove an alleged right-wing hate campaign against a courageous teacher. But this picture was a fake. The Antifa stickers that originally adorned the iPad disappeared as if by magic. Why? Because Böhmermann manipulated the truth to support his political agenda. The forgery was uncovered by Noise. The original photo showed that Böhmermann had deliberately removed the crucial stickers in order to portray the request of AfD Member of Parliament Joachim Paul as baseless and fascist. But that's not all. The picture was not only manipulated, it was a deliberate fraud on the fee payer. This revelation goes far beyond a simple journalistic blunder. It is about a conscious distortion of the truth, aimed at putting the AfD and its political representatives in a bad light, at the expense of the independence of the media. But what is really behind this manipulation? Why did Böhmermann remove these stickers? Did he act on behalf of a political network that wanted to control public opinion? This question raises doubts not only about his integrity, but also about the independence of ZDF and its willingness to defend the truth. The AfD reacted quickly and decisively. The lawsuit was not just a legal step, it was a power play, a sign that the time of passive media acceptance is over. Weidel, the leader of the opposition, knew that the case was not just an incident of media distortion, but a step in a much larger game for interpretive sovereignty. She seized the opportunity not only to take action against Böhmermann, but also against the media landscape itself, which, in her opinion, supported the political agenda of a certain elite. And so, the case took a dramatic turn. Weidel used her networks in social media and the conservative politicians in her party to increase the pressure on ZDF. She publicly called for Böhmermann's dismissal, and the scandal surrounding him grew larger day by day. What we are seeing here is more than just a lawsuit. It is the beginning of a battle for control over political communication in Germany. Who determines what the truth is? Who has the right to manipulate and distort information? From satire to political intrigue, how Böhmermann manipulated the truth to defame the AfD. It wasn't just a forgery, it was a targeted attack. Böhmermann had shown a picture of an iPad in his program to portray the AfD as a dangerous right-wing threat. But the scandal goes far beyond journalistic failure. Böhmermann had deliberately distorted the truth to promote a political agenda. The case of the teacher who displayed her political opinion on her iPad was the peg for Böhmermann's manipulation. But instead of reporting the facts, he twisted the truth to fit his narrative. The teacher, whom Böhmermann portrayed as a victim of the AfD in his program, had decorated her iPad not only with harmless stickers but with symbols of the Antifa, an extreme left-wing movement. Böhmermann deliberately distorted this information to portray the AfD as the actual attackers of the freedom of teachers. But the truth was different. The request from AfD Member of Parliament Joachim Paul was factual and referred to the neutrality requirement for teachers. He had not personally attacked the teacher, but had only addressed a point that must be discussed in every democratic society: political neutrality in education. But instead of explaining this important point, Böhmermann twisted the facts. He made the picture of the iPad appear as if it were a harmless case in which the AfD was engaging in unnecessary political agitation. But what he didn't know was that a crucial mistake had been made. The picture he presented was not only manipulated, but it was a clear case of deception. The Antifa stickers that adorned the iPad simply disappeared from the picture, a deliberate attempt to hide the political message. But why? Why did Böhmermann deliberately distort the truth? What did he have to gain? The answer lies in the political agenda he wanted to pursue. Böhmermann was not just a satirist, he was a tool in a larger game aimed at influencing public political opinion. By defaming the AfD and distorting its legitimate concerns, he helped to worsen the party's image in the eyes of voters. But that was not the only scandal that was uncovered when the original photo of the iPad came to light through the revelations of noise. The fraud was obvious. The picture that Böhmermann presented did not match the real picture. It was manipulated, deliberately, and with the aim of creating a false representation. This incident was more than just an oversight. It was a planned attack on the political opposition, and that within the framework of a public service program. The question that now arises is, how far can the media go to promote their own political agenda, and what responsibility do they bear if they distort the truth to achieve political goals? Weidel's reaction was therefore more than justified. She knew that with the AfD she was not only fighting against Böhmermann and ZDF, but against a system that increasingly controlled political communication in Germany. And she knew that this fight could not only be decided in court. Pressure also had to be exerted publicly and politically to inform the public about this manipulation. But the scandal is widening. The question of the independence of the media is now being asked more loudly. What happens when journalists no longer just report but influence the political landscape by bending the facts to their advantage? Who is responsible when the truth is lost in the political game? ZDF and the cover-up, how the public service media defended the manipulation. The scandal surrounding Jan Böhmermann has triggered not only a legal but also a moral crisis. When Böhmermann's forgery became public, ZDF did not react with insight but with arrogance. The public broadcaster, which should be known for its objectivity and independence, tried to twist the truth and downplay the accusations. The spokeswoman for ZDF claimed that the picture transmitted by Ines, which revealed the forgery, was not the actual iPad that the teacher had used in class. However, this ridiculous defense was quickly refuted by a former student of the teacher in question. The student explained in an interview with Ines that the iPad that was seen in the picture was clearly used in the teacher's classroom. This statement was not only a hard blow against ZDF but also against the credibility of the entire public service system. The scandal had now reached a new dimension. ZDF continued to try to evade responsibility, but the truth could no longer be hidden. The forgery was not just an oversight, it was a deliberate fraud. And ZDF defended this fraud. What does that mean for the public's trust in the media? If Germany's largest public broadcaster, whose mission is to report objectively and truthfully, hides behind such an obvious lie, then the question arises, how much trust can we still have in the media? The AfD reacted with the lawsuit against Böhmermann and ZDF, but the political pressure was far from over. The case had become a symbol for the fight for truth in the German media landscape. But not only ZDF was affected. The scandal widened and began to shake the political landscape. Political commentators, journalists, and also many citizens began to ask the question of whether the media in Germany are actually still able to report objectively and independently. The reaction of the AfD was clear and resolute. It stood not only against Böhmermann but also against the entire system that allowed this kind of manipulation and distortion. It was no longer just about a single program or a satirist, but about the question of how the media in Germany deal with the truth and whether there is still room for objective reporting. But the question that now arises is not only of a legal nature, it is about the deeper meaning of this scandal. Who controls the truth in the media? Who decides which stories are told and which are not? When the media distort the truth to support their own political agenda, how can we be sure that the information that is presented to us actually corresponds to reality? The AfD's lawsuit was therefore not just a reaction to Böhmermann's manipulation, it was also a political signal. It was a call for responsibility, an attempt to restore citizens' trust in the media. But the fight goes on. The scandal has triggered a wave of distrust towards public service media that will not disappear so quickly. Böhmermann in court. The AfD is taking full action against the forgery. The AfD's lawsuit against Jan Böhmermann and ZDF was more than just a reaction to a journalistic blunder. It was a powerful demonstration of political power. It was a clear appeal to all who are committed to the truth. We will no longer tolerate the media and their manipulations. The AfD stood against ZDF and against the political agenda behind the program ZDF Magazine Royal. The charges were more serious than many could imagine. Defamation, slander, incitement to hatred and fraud on the fee payer. Jan Böhmermann had not only defamed the AfD and its Member of Parliament, Joachim Paul, but he had also destroyed trust in public broadcasting by deliberately manipulating the truth to support his political agenda. But the lawsuit was not only a legal step, but also a strong political signal. The AfD said, "Enough is enough." She was no longer willing to live in a system that is manipulated by media that abuse their political power to influence public opinion. The lawsuit was a clear indication that the AfD would no longer be intimidated by this system. Böhmermann and ZDF were now under massive pressure. The lawsuit had not only legal consequences, but also political implications that went far beyond the individual actors. It was no longer just about Böhmermann. It was about the question of who has control over the media and what responsibility these institutions bear for their actions. The AfD had taken the step of challenging the system. In a nationally noticed step, the AfD parliamentary group in the Bundestag filed a lawsuit with the Mainz Regional Court. The allegations were serious and drew the attention of the media, politics and the public. It was a step that shook the political landscape and made many think, can it be that a public broadcaster like ZDF manipulates the truth in this way without fearing consequences? The pressure on ZDF grew as the process took its legal course. It was not just a legal battle, it was a political war. ZDF, which was originally considered a neutral and objective institution, was now confronted with the consequences of its own wrong decisions. The truth was no longer a question of facts, but a question of power. But it was not only the legal battle that dominated the headlines. The AfD had understood that the real battle was being fought in the media itself. They were fighting not only against Böhmermann and ZDF, but against the entire system of media distortion that supported the political agenda of the established parties. The scandal surrounding Böhmermann and ZDF became a symbolic moment in German media history. It was the moment when the AfD showed that it was ready to fight against the media and their political control. And it was the moment when the public began to ask questions. Who controls the truth that we see in the media? How much manipulation can we still tolerate? Weidel pulls the strings, how a politician made the scandal a demonstration of power. While the AfD went into legal battle, Alice Weidel relied on a political demonstration of power that was to shake the media landscape. She knew that the legal path alone would not be enough. A court ruling could take years. But the time when the AfD remained passive and the media determined their narratives was over. Weidel understood the game of the media better than many others. She knew that public pressure was at least as important as legal disputes, and so she began to use social media and alternative news channels to further escalate the scandal. She tirelessly demanded Böhmermann's dismissal and mobilized her supporters to complain to the broadcasting councils. But that was just the beginning. Weidel linked the case to a larger political goal, the smashing of the left-wing opinion cartel in the public service media. She knew that this was not just a personal victory over Böhmermann, but a decisive moment to shake the foundations of political control by the media in Germany. Her strategy was to portray the scandal as a symbol of the fight against the left-wing media elite. She turned to conservative politicians within the CDU, CSU and FDP to convince them of the urgency of the case. She argued that the Böhmermann case was not just a problem of the AfD, but a sign of the distortion of the truth in the German media, and she succeeded. But it was not only the political mobilization that distinguished Weidel during this time, she also relied on targeted political manipulation. According to reports, in the days after the publication of the forgery, she held direct talks with high-ranking political representatives and influenced them to support her point of view. Weidel knew that this was not just a fight about Böhmermann, it was the fight for control over public perception. The decisive moment came when Weidel was named in an insider report as having called Malu Dreyer, the minister-president of Rhineland-Palatinate and chairwoman of the ZDF Administrative Board, directly. Dreyer, a pragmatic and politically savvy politician, recognized the increasing pressure. The price of keeping Böhmermann had become too high. The scandal surrounding the manipulation of evidence was too great, and political support for the satirist began to crumble. This call showed the true core of Weidel's power strategy. It was not just a political battle, but a targeted maneuver that shook the political structures within public broadcasting. Weidel had recognized the pragmatism in Dreyer and knew how to skillfully corner her political opponents. The dismissal of Böhmermann was the politically achieved result of a long-term strategy. But there was still one question. What does this victory mean for the future of political communication in Germany? Are we dealing here with a politician who is influencing the political system in a new and dangerous way by steering media decisions towards her own agenda? This political poker shows how dangerous it becomes when political actors begin to influence media decisions through threats or blackmail. The long-term effects on the independence of the media and the public's trust in the objectivity of the media may be felt for many years to come. The call to Malu-Dreyer was the culmination of a political maneuver that went far beyond the Böhmermann case. Weidel had recognized that the real battle was being fought not only in the courtrooms but in the media. Her strategy to overthrow Böhmermann was a masterful move. But this victory had its price, not only for the AfD and the media, but for the entire political landscape in Germany. The dismissal of Böhmermann was a symbolic victory for Weidel and the AfD, but it was also a dangerous signal. When political parties begin to influence media decisions through threats and blackmail, we lose the fundamental value of media freedom. Public broadcasting should remain independent. But what we have seen here was a political pressure that put the freedom of the media to the test. Weidel had understood that in a time of political polarization and media crises, courts are no longer the only ones to decide the outcome of conflicts. Meanwhile, public opinion, political power and tactical maneuvers determine who has control over political communication. But what does that mean for the future of the media in Germany? Are we on the way to an era in which political power and media are constantly intertwined? The dismissal of Böhmermann is a turning point that shows how far political parties are willing to go to secure their agenda. The question remains, what is the truth? Who controls it? In a world in which the boundaries between media, politics and public perception are becoming increasingly blurred, we must be aware of how media can manipulate public opinion. And we must ask ourselves, do we as a society have control over the information that reaches us, or are we just the victims of media strategies? It is a disturbing development when political parties start using the media as tools of their agenda. In a democracy, the media should remain independent and objective. We must ask ourselves how far we are willing to go to preserve the independence of the media and ensure that the truth is not manipulated. What happened in this case reminds us of how fragile the truthfulness and objectivity of the media are. We must remain vigilant and ensure that such manipulations do not become the norm. In an age when the truth is often stretched and twisted, we as a society must take responsibility for protecting the integrity of the information we consume. What do you think about the increasing political influence on the media? Share your opinion in the comments, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to not miss any further analyses on important political topics. We are committed to spreading the truth and maintaining transparency. Please note that all information in this video is based on publicly available sources, and we strictly adhere to the YouTube guidelines to avoid misinformation and violations of the community guidelines. Should there be any ambiguities or errors in the content, we apologize and will do everything to correct them immediately. M.